All right, what's up everybody? Today we're going to be making the Rhino pull toy, excuse me. So the pull toy is going to help us learn some basic commands in the solids and transforms menu. I'm going to be reading this verbal tutorial as I go. It's just going to be off screen, so go ahead and follow along with me today. So the first thing you're going to need to do is go up to File in Rhino 7 and click on New using Template. You're going to scroll down to the Small Objects Centimeters template and double click. That will open a new window which looks like that. Oftentimes when you open a new file in Rhino, there's this right hand sidebar, and you're going to need to minimize that just so you have full real estate. All right, let's begin. The first thing we need to do is turn on the ortho button up in the status bar. Ortho means straight. So when that button is pressed, we'll only be allowed to draw in the red direction or the green direction. So we're going to create an ellipsoid first. So go up to the solid menu, find ellipsoid, and click from center. Go down and hover your mouse in the top viewport. Notice that when my mouse is in the top viewport, that the word top is actually blue. So that means it's active. If I move my mouse over to the perspective viewport, notice how perspective turns blue. Same thing for right and front. So that's going to be important because the orientation of all of these objects we're about to work with, they have to be oriented in a certain direction. So I'm going to hover my mouse in the top viewport, and I'm going to type 0, 0, 11 and hit return. What that does over in the perspective viewport, if you right click and orbit, you can see that it puts a point up in the air above the origin 11 units. Next, I'm over here on number 5 in the ellipsoid thing. It says there's a prompt in the command area up here. It says, where do you want the end of your first axis? So we're going to type 15 and hit return. And that makes a line segment that's 15 units long, but it doesn't know which direction we want it in. Well, we want it in the right direction. So go ahead and hover your mouse right of that point in this area and click. Next, where it says the end of second axis prompt, please type 8 and hit return. You're going to hold your mouse in the green direction above that oval that is now on your screen, or the ellipse, and click. And the last thing is you're going to type 9 in the end of third axis prompt and hit return. And that puts this cool egg-looking shape called an ellipsoid right in the middle of your perspective viewport. Now currently it's not shaded, it's drawn in what's called wireframe. So if you'd like it shaded, which you do, you're going to right click and go down to shaded. And that puts the skin on it, or what we call a surface. Cool. Now it's time to make the axles and the wheel hub. So what we're going to do now is go up to the solid menu, and we're going to use the cylinder command. And with our mouse in the front viewport, which means, remember, the front viewport is active, we're going to type 9, 6.5 and hit return. And that puts a dot right there. The center of the dot is 9 units to the right and 6.5 units up from the origin, which is right there. And the next prompt, it says, how big do you want the radius to be? You're going to type 0.5 and hit return. And lastly, at the end of cylinder prompt in the command options, so remember, the command we're running is called cylinder, and the options are right below it. We're going to check both sides, and we're going to type 10. And we're going to hit, whoops, let's go back. Do you see how I drew mine and it's vertical? That means I clicked at one point with my mouse in the wrong viewport. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to redo the cylinder command. So I'm going to hover my mouse in the front viewport and type 9, 6.5. I'm going to do that over again. I'm going to type 0.5 for the radius. I'm going to check both sides, and I'm going to keep my mouse in the front viewport and type 10 and hit return. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for a horizontal axle. The next thing we're going to do is create the wheel hub. To create the wheel hub, what we're going to do is we're going to run the cylinder command again. So click on the solid menu, go to cylinder, and at the base of cylinder prompt, we're going to move our cursor to the front viewport again, and we're going to type 9, 6.5, 10. And that puts a point right at the end of the axle we just drew. But make sure your mouse is still in the front viewport. At the radius prompt, type 4 and hit return. And then go up to the command options here and uncheck both sides. Right now you can see as I stretch it, it doubles the stretch. We want it just to be on one side. So we're going to put it on one side and we're going to type 2 and hit return. And now we have this really cool cylinder right there that looks like an axle. Go ahead and save your work right now. In order to save your work, you're going to hit Command S. You want to make sure that the .3dm is still active, so all you have to do is press delete with untitled 3 and call this the Rhino pull toy. That'll work. I like to save it on the desktop, but if you wanted to save it somewhere else, that's fine. The desktop is just super easy to organize your files later. So now it's saved. When it's saved, you'll see the Rhino pull toy.3dm at the very top. You need to have the .3dm in your file name because that means it's a Rhino file and you're going to open it in Rhino. All right, the next thing we're going to do is create the lug nuts. So we're going to create a hexagon. So go up to the curve menu and go down to polygon and go to center and radius. We're going to move the cursor to the front viewport again, and we're going to type 9, 8, 12 and press enter. At the corner of polygon prompt, we're going to type 0.5 and we're going to hit enter. And I might have missed it before, but if the number of sides don't say 6, you need to change that right now. And then we're going to hover our mouse, we're going to drag it to the right instead of up. We're going to drag it to the right and click. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn that hexagon, which is just a flat shape, it's just made with a curve, we're going to turn it into a solid by extruding it. So go ahead and select that hexagon you just drew and go up to the solid menu and go down to extrude planar curve. Planar means it's flat and curve means it's just made up with lines. So we're going to extrude this straight, and this is kind of like the push-pull tool on SketchUp. At the extrusion distance prompt right here in the command options, we're going to make sure that both sides is unchecked. Go ahead and click solid or make sure it's checked and then click or check delete input. So we're going to move the cursor away from the wheel hub just like this in the perspective viewport, and then we're going to type 0.5 and hit return, and that creates the lug nut. There you go. That's the nut that holds the tire on here in a second. Next we have to do an array, and in this case we're going to do a polar array. So go ahead and go up to the transform menu at the top of the screen, go down to array and find the one that says polar. Polar basically means circle. So we want to array this in a circle. All right, and we're going to go to the front viewport, and we are going to select object to array. So we're going to click that. There we go. And it says press enter when done. So I'm going to click return. And then it says the center of array polar. And this is where I need to use some of these object snap buttons here. So I want to array this around the center of that circle. So if I click center and I move my mouse, if I hover my mouse over the wheel that I just drew, notice how it puts a point right there in the center. So I'm just going to hover my mouse over it and click the center. Then it says how many numbers do I want, or sorry, how many items do I want. I'm going to click 5, just type 5. It will overwrite the 3 that's there and press enter. This should be 360 degrees. Make sure you're still in the front viewport and hit return. And it says press enter to accept. And I press enter. And notice how the 5 lug nuts are all arrayed. They've been spun and copied. That's what the array tool is. Go ahead and save your work. Click that disk in the top left, save. That will resave it as the same file type over on your desktop. Next, we have to draw the tires. So we're going to use the shape called the torus. So in the solid menu, go down to torus. It's kind of like an inner tube type shape. And at the center of torus prompt in the object snap control, select one shot and click between. So right here, we're going to select one shot, and as soon as we do it, there'll be another menu that pops up, and we're going to click on between. Next, in the perspective viewport, we are going to move the cursor near an edge of the wheel hub until the Scent tooltip appears and click. There we go. So right here, we're going to move it next to this, and we're going to click. And then we're going to move the cursor near the other edge, which is over here. And we are going to click. And what that does is, if you look at this in the top viewport, is it puts a point right in the middle of our hub, which is right here. Next, at the radius prompt, move the cursor to the front viewport down here in the bottom left and type 5 and hit return. And this makes the radius of the torus tube 1 unit bigger than the wheel hub. And then at the second radius prompt, type 1.5 and hit return. And now we have this beautiful tire. At any point in time, if you want to inspect your work on a larger screen, you can just double click on the word perspective, and you can orbit around and see that. And then you can double click on the perspective word to go back to the 4, or you can just click on these right up here at the top, front, right, perspective, and all 4 together. If you ever want to resize these because they're out of center, you can type ZEA, which means zoom extents all, and hit return, and that will reorient all of your viewports, zoom extents in all viewports, so that everything is nice and tidy right in the middle of your screen. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to mirror the wheels. So we're going to move to the top viewport, and we are going to use a window selection tool to highlight the wheel. So watch what I do here. I'm going to put my mouse right up here, and I'm going to draw a box starting on the left and going to the right, so that everything, the only thing that's highlighted that's in yellow is the wheel, the tire, and the 5 lug nuts. I don't want the axle. The next thing I'm going to do is go up to the transform menu and go to mirror. And in the mirror, in the command options portal up here, it's going to say we want to copy and what axis do we want to mirror this over. Well, the red axis right here is oriented right here. This is the x-axis. So if I click on x-axis, it takes that shape and it mirrors it right over. And you can see here, now I have 2 wheels and 2 tires. Next, we're going to mirror to create the front wheels and the axles. So now we're going to go up to the top right here, and we're going to draw a selection box around both of the wheels and the hub. So we're just going to draw this like this, and we're going to select the wheels, the axle, and the other wheels. And next we're going to go up to the transform tool again and choose mirror. And this one we're going to mirror over the y-axis. Boom, now we have 4 wheels and 4 tires. And that should look like that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw some eyes. So go up to the solid menu, and we're going to go down to sphere and choose the center radius prompt. Next, we're going to go to the object snap control, which is this long list here, and we're going to click on surface. There we go. And in the perspective viewport, select the body ellipsoid and pick a point on the surface. So we're going to, it says in the command prompt here, select the surface. So we're going to click on the ellipsoid, and then it wants to know where the center of the sphere is. So we are going to just click right up here in the front, and then we're going to type 3 for the radius and hit return. And notice that sticks a sphere right on the surface and it intersects. Now we can move this around a little bit. Now I can move this in 3 different viewports here. So if I wanted it moved up a little bit, I can move it up. If I wanted it moved over, I can move it over in the right viewport. I can move it back a little bit so it looks a little different. And then in all of these, I can orbit around. All right, let's move this down a little bit. That looks about good right there. You have creative liberty over this project, so you can put it wherever you want. If you want it a little higher, lower, a little bit more sunk in. Next, we're going to mirror the eye. You should know how to do that, but we're going to select the eye and go to the transform menu and click mirror. And we want this mirrored over the red axis, which is the x-axis. So go ahead and click X. And then we just doubled our eyes right there. Next, we're going to make the pull cord. So in this one, we're going to zoom out in all of the viewports here. Zoom out a little bit because you're going to need a little bit of real estate here. And we're going to go up to our grid up here, and we are going to turn off ortho, and we are going to turn planar mode on. And in the object snap, we're going to disable all of these. We're going to click on persistent and disable all for right now. Next, we're going to create our pull cord at the front of the toy. So now we're going to go up to our curve menu, and we're going to choose freeform and control points. At the start of curve prompt, in the top viewport, we are going to hold the command key, and we're going to click on the inside the front end of the body ellipse. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see it. So I'm going to hold the command key, which I'm holding now, and I want this in just a little bit. Let's go to like maybe 1 unit in, and I'm going to click. All right. Now in the front viewport, this is utilizing what's called elevator mode. So we know we want the point on this plane vertically, which we identified right here in the top viewport. So we're just going to rise this up, and we are going to click right there. And what that does is that puts that point right there. Now I'm going to begin making my rope. So in the next point prompt, I'm going to go to the top viewport and I'm going to move this straight out. Just like that. And it's going to come out of the pull toy. And now I'm going to go to the front viewport and I'm going to begin letting gravity do its thing. And this pull cord wouldn't be hanging straight out like that because it's a rope. It would be dropping to the ground. So we're going to drop it to the ground. And as we get closer to the ground, we're going to kind of, remember the ground is this line right here. We're going to bring it down to about ground level. And then I'm going to zoom out. And from the top, I'm going to slew this rope around. And while you're doing this, you should be using the perspective viewport to make sure your rope actually looks like kind of like a rope would look. So it's going to move to the left a little bit. It's going to move to the right. At any point in time, remember, you can hold your right mouse button down while the tool is active. And then let's just pretend at the very end, the last kid to play with this just threw it down. And it looks like that. When we're all done, hit return. In the perspective viewport, if I double click, it should look like a rope that's laying on the ground. That comes out of the front of the pull toy. Gravity pulls it down, and it's lying on the floor. All right. So we're going to turn planar mode off, and everything is good to go. All right, the next thing we're going to do is make the cord handle, and that's going to be with an ellipsoid. Once again, I'm going to hit ZEA to recenter all of these, and I'm going to go to the persistent, click disable, or sorry, enable now, and I'm going to turn end on. Now I'm going to go to the solid tools and go to ellipsoid, and this one we're going to go from foci, from a focus. All right. All right. Next we're going to go to the top viewport and we're going to zoom in here, and because end is enabled, it's going to want to snap right to that end point. So we're going to click right there. We're going to drag this ellipse about that big, and then we're going to make it a handle, just like that. So in my perspective viewport, I should have this thing that looks like a handle. There you go. All right. One of the last things we're going to do is we're going to thicken the curve with the pipe tool. So we're going to select our cord, and when I click it, the entire cord should turn yellow. And we're going to go to the solid menu, and we're going to choose pipe. At the start radius prompt, go ahead and type 0.2 and hit return. And at the end radius prompt, it's still 0.2, so just click that again. And then at the point for next radius prompt, just click return again. And you can see here that that cord, that string that we just drew, actually looks like a rope now. So that's super cool. All right, and now at this point in time, we are done with our pull toy. In the perspective viewport, this is what it looks like. If at any time you want to experiment with coloring it, you can always try that. Coloring is a little bit different than just grabbing a paint bucket in SketchUp. So we can just click on this. At any point in time, you can go to the materials. We can click that and go to this little thing, which is the materials property. We can use a material. So in this case, we'll just use a default material. We'll call it plastic. No, we'll call it metal. And then we can choose this and make a color by clicking that. Let's make it red, like in the thing here. And when you do that, you notice that nothing happens in the shaded viewport. But if we go to rendered, you can see that this actually is made out of metal, and it's super shiny. So we can always go back to the shaded viewport and select this and this. We can go to use layer material, and we can choose default material. We can change this to a black because we want it to appear black, and we'll go to plastic. And in this one, we want the reflectivity to be 0. We don't want it. And the clarity, we want it to be frosted. So now, over here in rendered, it appears like those are matte colored eyes. Go ahead and try to color this up just like that. When you're all done, you're going to take a screenshot. You're going to do the Shift Command 4, drag a box over it, submit that to the assignment. And I hope you enjoyed drawing the Rhino pull toy along with me. Also, save your work.